My parents begged for money for Grandma's funeral but spent it on my brother's Vegas wedding. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update on this story. And don't forget to let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Isabelle clutched her phone with trembling fingers. The antiseptic smell burned her nostrils while her grandmother's labored breathing filled the sterile room. Isabelle had been sitting vigil for 3 days, watching the woman who raised her slip away piece by piece. Grandma Ruby's weathered hands, once strong enough to knead bread and discipline grandchildren, now lay motionless against white sheets. "You need to call your parents," the nurse whispered gently, checking Ruby's vitals one final time. The numbers on the monitor told a story Isabelle wasn't ready to accept. She dialed her mother's number with shaking hands, each ring echoing in the hollow chamber of her chest. "Mama, it's time," she whispered when her mother Evelyn finally answered. The words felt like glass in her throat. Through the phone, she heard her father Christian's voice in the background, asking questions she couldn't bear to answer twice. Within hours, her parents arrived with red-rimmed eyes and hushed voices. Her brother Justin burst through the door 20 minutes later, his expensive cologne clashing with the hospital's medicinal atmosphere. He wore a designer suit that probably cost more than Isabelle's monthly rent, his gold watch catching the harsh lighting. As Ruby took her final breath, the family stood united in grief. But Isabelle couldn't shake the feeling that this unity was fragile, temporary. She'd seen the way her parents looked at Justin differently, heard the pride in their voices when they spoke of his success. Little did she know, this moment of sorrow would soon reveal the depths of favoritism that would shatter her world completely. 2 days after the funeral home visit, reality hit like a sledgehammer. Isabelle sat across from Mr. Thomas, the funeral director, as he slid the estimate across his mahogany desk. The number at the bottom made her stomach drop. $12,847 for a basic service. Ruby had always wanted dignity in death, and dignity came with a price tag. "We can work out a payment plan," Mr. Thomas offered, his voice professionally sympathetic. But Isabelle knew the truth. Her teacher's salary barely covered her own bills, let alone a funeral that cost more than some people's cars. That evening, she called her parents, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "We need to talk about Grandma's arrangements," she began, but Evelyn cut her off immediately. "Baby, you know we'd help if we could," her mother's voice cracked through the phone. "But your father got laid off last month, and with my hours cut at the grocery store." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Christian took the phone, his deep voice filled with shame. "Princess, we're barely keeping the lights on. We've got maybe $300 between us, and that's got to last until Evelyn's next check." Isabelle felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd assumed her parents had some savings, some cushion for emergencies. The revelation that they were living paycheck to paycheck while maintaining appearances crushed her spirit. Ruby deserved better than a pauper's burial, but the math was unforgiving. "What about Justin?" she asked quietly, though part of her already knew the answer. Her brother had been notably absent from financial discussions, despite his obvious wealth. Justin's response came through their mother, delivered with the careful tone of someone repeating rehearsed words. Evelyn called Isabelle the next morning, her voice strained with the weight of uncomfortable conversations. "Your brother says his money is all tied up in investments right now," she explained, the words tumbling out quickly. "He's got this big business deal closing next month and he can't touch anything until then." Isabelle gripped the phone tighter. "Mama, he drives a BMW and lives in that fancy downtown loft. Surely he has something." "He's explained it all to us, baby. It's complicated business stuff we don't understand." Evelyn's defensive tone revealed everything Isabelle needed to know about her parents' blind faith in their son's excuses. The next day brought an unexpected visitor. Justin's girlfriend Tiffany appeared at Isabelle's apartment, her designer handbag swinging from her manicured fingers. Everything about her screamed money, from her flawless weave to her diamond earrings that caught the light with every movement. "Girl, I feel so bad about your grandmother," Tiffany cooed, settling onto Isabelle's second-hand couch like she was doing her a favor. "Justin wanted to help, but you know how men are with money. Always thinking about the future instead of the present." Isabelle studied Tiffany's face, searching for sincerity but finding only practiced sympathy. "What kind of business is he in again?" she asked, though Justin had always been vague about his work. Tiffany's laugh was sharp, artificial. "Oh honey, I barely understand it myself. Something about online marketing and investments. Very technical stuff." She waved her hand dismissively, her 3-carat engagement ring catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. With the funeral scheduled for the following week and options dwindling, Isabelle found herself doing something she'd never imagined: creating a crowdfunding page. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard as she tried to find words that wouldn't sound like begging. "Help us honor Grandma Ruby's memory," she typed, then deleted it. Too generic. "A woman who raised us deserves better," she tried again. The cursor blinked mockingly at her attempts to monetize grief. Finally, she settled on simple truth. "My grandmother Ruby Washington raised 4 children alone after my grandfather died in Vietnam. She worked double shifts at the textile factory for 30 years, never missing a day. She deserves a funeral with dignity, but our family is struggling financially. Any contribution would mean the world to us." She posted it to her social media, sent it to friends, and shared it in her church group. The responses trickled in slowly, $20 here, $50 there. Her co-workers at the elementary school where she taught contributed what they could. Mrs. Harper from down the hall gave $100 with a note that read, "Ruby helped me through my divorce 20 years ago. This is the least I can do." But even with the community's generosity, they were still $4,000 short. Isabelle watched the fundraising total climb painfully slowly, each notification bringing hope followed by the crushing realization that it wasn't enough. That's when her parents suggested something that made her stomach turn: asking her wealthy Aunt Carmen, Ruby's sister who lived across the country. Carmen had married well and moved to California decades ago, maintaining minimal contact with the family. The idea of calling her felt like admitting complete failure. Carmen's voice was crisp and businesslike when she answered the phone, but it softened immediately upon hearing about Ruby's death. Despite years of distance, the sisters had shared an unbreakable bond forged in poverty and single motherhood. "That woman raised me when our mama died," Carmen said, her voice thick with unexpected emotion. "Ruby was more mother than sister to me." The line went quiet for a moment, filled only with the sound of Carmen's shaky breathing. Without hesitation, Carmen promised to wire $5,000 within the hour. "Ruby never asked me for anything, not once in 40 years, she said. "The least I can do is make sure she goes home with dignity." Isabelle felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly knocked her off her feet. Combined with the crowdfunding donations, they'd have enough for the funeral Ruby deserved. She called her parents immediately and for the first time in days, heard genuine joy in their voices. "Thank you, Jesus," Evelyn whispered through tears. "Your grandmama is going to have the beautiful service she always wanted." Christian was equally emotional. "Princess, call the funeral home right now. Tell them we can do everything, the flowers, the music, the programs, all of it." That evening, the family gathered at Isabelle's apartment to plan the service. Even Justin showed up, bringing expensive wine and acting as if he'd been instrumental in solving their financial crisis. He spoke eloquently about Grandma Ruby's legacy while avoiding any mention of his own absence from the fundraising efforts. But as they planned hymns and selected photos, Isabelle noticed something odd. Her parents kept exchanging meaningful looks with Justin, the kind of silent communication that excluded her completely. She pushed the feeling aside, attributing it to stress and grief. Ruby's funeral was everything she would have wanted. The small church overflowed with mourners, from former co-workers to neighborhood children she'd helped raise. White lilies, her favorite flowers, adorned the altar while the choir sang "Precious Lord," with voices that seemed to lift the very walls. Isabelle delivered the eulogy, her words painting a picture of a woman who'd sacrificed everything for family. She spoke of Ruby's calloused hands that made the best cornbread in the county, her fierce protection of her grandchildren, and her unwavering faith despite life's hardships. Justin followed with his own speech, polished and emotional, drawing tears from the congregation. He spoke of business lessons learned at Ruby's kitchen table and values instilled through her quiet example. To anyone watching, he appeared to be the devoted grandson, grieving publicly with appropriate dignity. After the service, people approached Isabelle with stories she'd never heard. Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store revealed that Ruby had quietly paid for struggling families' food when they came up short. Coach Williams from the community center shared how Ruby had volunteered to tutor children whose parents worked nights. "Your grandmother was an angel on earth," one elderly woman whispered, pressing a tissue into Isabelle's hand. "She helped my grandson get his first job when everyone else had given up on him." As they lowered Ruby's casket into the ground, Isabelle felt a mixture of profound sadness and deep gratitude. They'd given her grandmother the send-off she deserved, surrounded by love and respect. The financial stress was behind them and Ruby was finally at peace. But even in her grief, Isabelle couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. Her parents seemed distracted, whispering urgently with Justin during quiet moments. When she tried to join their conversations, they would stop talking and smile at her with forced brightness. 3 weeks after Ruby's funeral, Justin called Isabelle with news that made her blood run cold. His voice bubbled with excitement as he announced his engagement to Tiffany, but that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what came next. "We're getting married in Vegas next month," he said, his words rushing together in his enthusiasm. "Tiffany's always dreamed of getting married at that fancy chapel on the Strip. You know, the one where all the celebrities go." Isabelle felt something twist in her stomach. "Next month? That's pretty quick, Justin. Are you sure you don't want to wait, maybe plan something bigger for the family?" His laugh was dismissive. "Nah, sis. We're not trying to have some long engagement. When you know, right? Besides, Tiffany's got her heart set on Vegas." "But the expense," Isabelle started, remembering his claims about having no available money just weeks earlier. "Oh, don't worry about that," Justin interrupted. "Everything's worked out perfectly. That business deal I mentioned came through even better than expected. We're talking about a $20,000 wedding, baby. The works, presidential suite, private jet, the whole 9 yards." The phone slipped in Isabelle's sweaty palm. $20,000. Just weeks after claiming he couldn't contribute a single dollar to their grandmother's funeral, Justin was planning to spend more than Ruby's entire service on a weekend in Vegas. "How?" she whispered, but Justin was already moving on, describing the chapel's crystal chandeliers and the reception at some 5-star restaurant. Each detail felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of how easily he could have solved their financial crisis but chose not to. "And here's the best part," Justin continued, oblivious to his sister's growing horror. "Mom and Dad are coming to help us celebrate. They're so excited, it'll be like a family vacation." That night, Isabelle couldn't sleep. She paced her small apartment, trying to make sense of the impossible mathematics of her family's situation. 3 weeks ago, her parents couldn't scrape together $300. Now they were planning a trip to Vegas for a $20,000 wedding? She called her mother the next morning, her voice carefully controlled. "Mama, Justin told me about the wedding plans. How are you and Daddy going to afford a trip to Vegas?" Evelyn's laugh sounded forced, nervous. "Oh baby, Justin's taking care of everything. He's paying for our flights and hotel. Isn't that sweet of him? But what about spending money? Food, entertainment, all that?" Isabelle pressed, knowing her parents wouldn't want to seem completely dependent on Justin's generosity. There was a long pause before Evelyn answered. "Well, we've been saving up a little something. You know how it is." The lie sat between them like a physical presence. Isabelle knew her parents' financial situation hadn't magically improved in 3 weeks. Her father was still unemployed, her mother still working reduced hours. Yet somehow they'd found money for a Vegas vacation while their family had begged strangers on the internet for funeral funds. That afternoon she decided to do some investigating. She called her cousin Layla, who worked at the bank where her parents had their accounts. Layla couldn't give specifics due to privacy rules, but she could share general observations. "Your parents have been making some unusual transactions lately," Layla said carefully. "Large deposits followed by immediate withdrawals. It's not typical for their usual pattern." Isabelle's heart began to race. "What kind of amounts are we talking about?" "I can't say exactly, but let's just say it's more money than they usually see in their account at one time." Layla's voice was gentle but concerned. "Isabelle, is everything okay with your family?" A horrible thought began forming in Isabelle's mind, one so awful she tried to push it away. But like a splinter under skin, it worked its way deeper until she couldn't ignore it anymore. She found herself driving to her parents' house without conscious decision, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. She found them in the living room, surrounded by travel brochures and Vegas guidebooks. Evelyn looked up with guilty surprise when Isabelle walked in unannounced, quickly shoving some papers under a magazine. "Princess." Christian boomed with forced cheerfulness. "What brings you by?" "We were just planning our trip to see Justin get married." Isabelle sat down across from them, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Her voice was steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "Of course, baby," Evelyn said, but her eyes wouldn't meet Isabelle's. "Where did you get the money for this trip?" Isabelle asked directly. 3 weeks ago, you couldn't help with Grandma's funeral. Now you're going to Vegas. I need to understand how that's possible." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Christian cleared his throat several times and Evelyn fidgeted with her wedding ring. Finally, Christian spoke, his voice defensive. "We told you Justin's paying for everything. Our son wants to celebrate with us and we're grateful for his generosity." But Isabelle had seen the Vegas brochures, the handwritten notes about restaurant reservations and show tickets. These weren't things Justin would pay for. They were personal expenses her parents were planning to cover themselves. "Mama," she said quietly, "I know Aunt Carmen sent $5,000 for the funeral. The service only cost $3,000. What happened to the extra $2,000? Evelyn's face crumbled like a house of cards. Her hands began shaking as tears spilled down her cheeks, and Christian looked everywhere except at his daughter's face. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the tick of the old grandfather clock Ruby had given them years ago. "Baby, you have to understand," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. "Justin is getting married. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for our son." Isabelle felt the world tilt sideways. "You took Grandma's funeral money for Justin's wedding?" "Not just that," Christian said heavily, his shoulders sagging under the weight of confession. "The crowdfunding money too. All of it." The room began spinning. Isabelle gripped the arm of her chair, trying to steady herself as the full scope of the betrayal hit her. People donated their hard-earned money to honor Grandma Ruby. Mrs. Harper gave $100 she probably couldn't afford. My coworkers, our church family, complete strangers who read our story online. "We were going to pay it back," Evelyn said desperately. "Justin promised he'd give us the money after his business deal closed. We were just borrowing it." "Borrowing it?" Isabelle's voice rose sharply. "You stole money donated for our grandmother's funeral to fund your son's Vegas wedding. Do you hear how insane that sounds?" Christian finally looked at her, his eyes red with shame. "Justin said the funeral was already paid for with Carmen's money. He said the extra was just sitting there, and he needed our help to make his wedding perfect." Isabelle stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "So when Justin asks, you find a way. When I begged for help honoring the woman who raised us all, you had nothing. But for his wedding, you steal from our family, our friends, our community." Isabelle drove straight to Justin's downtown loft, her vision blurred by tears of rage and betrayal. She pounded on his door until he answered, his face shifting from surprise to concern when he saw her expression. "Sis, what's wrong? You look—" "I know what you did," she said, pushing past him into his expensive apartment. The place reeked of privilege. Imported furniture, original artwork, a wine collection that probably cost more than most people's cars. "I know about the money." Justin's face went carefully blank. "What money? Don't you dare lie to me," Isabelle snarled. "You manipulated our parents into stealing the funeral donations for your wedding. $7,000 that people gave to honor Grandma Ruby, and you convinced them to hand it over for your Vegas party." "Look, it's not like that," Justin started, but Isabelle cut him off. "It's exactly like that. While I was creating crowdfunding pages and begging for help, you were already planning how to steal the money. You watched me stress myself sick over funeral costs when you could have written a check without thinking twice." Justin's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold calculation underneath. "The old lady was already dead, Isabelle. The fancy funeral wasn't going to bring her back. At least this money is going towards something that matters. My future." Isabelle stared at him in horror. "Something that matters? Grandma Ruby raised you when Mama worked nights. She taught you to read, helped you with homework, believed in you when nobody else did. And you call honoring her memory meaningless." "I'm not saying it's meaningless," Justin said, his voice growing defensive. I'm saying it's practical. Tiffany and I are building a life together. This wedding is an investment in our future happiness. With stolen money, Isabelle said quietly. Built on lies and betrayal. Justin's face hardened, all pretense of family affection disappearing. You want to know the truth, Isabelle? I've been supporting this family for years. Every time Dad got laid off, every time Mom's hours got cut. Who do you think kept the lights on? You. I never knew, Isabelle started, but Justin wasn't finished. Of course you didn't know. Because nobody wants to burden precious Isabelle with real problems. You think your teacher's salary and your little apartment make you independent? Our parents have been living off my money for 3 years. The revelation hit like a physical blow. That doesn't give you the right to steal from people who trusted us. I'm not stealing anything. Justin exploded. I'm taking what's mine. Every dollar that came in for that funeral was possible because of the life I've built, the reputation our family has in this community. You think people donated because they loved you? They donated because they respect success. Tiffany emerged from the bedroom, her silk robe flowing behind her like she was performing in some twisted drama. Baby, what's all the shouting about? She asked, then noticed Isabelle. Oh, family drama again. Your fiancé stole $7,000 from our grandmother's funeral fund, Isabelle said flatly. Tiffany barely blinked. Well, it's not like she needed it anymore. Besides, Justin told me his parents gave him the money willingly. They wanted to contribute to our special day. The casual cruelty of the statement left Isabelle speechless. She looked between Justin and Tiffany, seeing them clearly for the first time. These weren't the people she'd grown up loving. They were strangers wearing familiar faces, capable of justifying anything that served their desires. I'm telling everyone, Isabelle said quietly. Every person who donated, every family member, everyone at church. They deserve to know what you did with their kindness. Isabelle kept her promise. Within 48 hours, the truth spread through their community like wildfire. She started with a Facebook post, simple and direct. I need to share something painful about my family and the funeral donations for my grandmother Ruby Washington. The response was swift and devastating. Mrs. Harper called first, her voice shaking with hurt and anger. I gave that money from my medication fund, child. I thought I was helping honor Miss Ruby's memory. Coach Williams was more direct. That boy is banned from the community center. I don't care how much money he has. We don't tolerate thieves here. The church was split between those who supported Justin's position as a successful member and those who were horrified by the betrayal of trust. Pastor Matthews called for a family meeting, but Justin refused to attend, claiming he was too busy with wedding preparations. Her parents tried desperately to mediate, calling Isabelle repeatedly with pleas for family unity. You're destroying us, her mother sobbed over the phone. The whole community is talking about us. People are looking at us like we're criminals. You are criminals, Isabelle replied, her voice hollow with exhaustion. You stole money from people who trusted you. The Vegas wedding proceeded as planned, but the celebration was hollow. Photos on social media showed forced smiles and expensive decorations, but those who knew the truth could see the emptiness underneath. Several family members refused to attend, and others who did go were clearly there out of obligation rather than joy. Isabelle spent the wedding weekend volunteering at a local homeless shelter, finding peace in serving others the way Ruby had taught her. As she ladled soup into bowls, she realized that some betrayals can never be forgiven, only accepted as the price of seeing people's true nature. The money was never repaid. Justin's business deal fell through a month later, though he never admitted it publicly. The family fractured permanently, with holidays becoming exercises in polite hostility and genuine relationships reduced to social media performances. But Isabelle had learned something valuable. Integrity isn't negotiable, and sometimes loving your family means refusing to enable their worst impulses. Ruby would have understood. Thanks for watching. Your support means more to us than words can express. We're so thankful to have you here. Tell us in the comment section what you think about this story.